Hello, welcome to another edition of Spoonfuls of Help Desk. My name is Lisa Smith. Today we're going to talk about compensation time, or comp time, as we all know it. We know, and I hope we know, that comp time in the private sector is a no-no, right? When we have hourly employees that are making overtime for any hours over 40 in a 7-day work period for most states, we are going to pay them time and a half, right? Now, what some employers would prefer to do is keep a running total of that overtime and then let the employee take it maybe at Christmas when they want some extra time off, or maybe in July when they want extra vacation time, right? But did you know that that's actually illegal? We cannot do that. There are some exceptions to that rule, and one of the biggest exceptions is the public sector employers. So let me be very clear. If you work for a city, a county, a state, or any other sort of a public employer, like a school system, maybe a corrections department, someone like that, anyone who is a public employer, okay, a government employer, then absolutely you are allowed to run a comp bank. So don't get me wrong on that. Everybody take a deep breath, okay? But if you work for private sector employers, and everybody listen up, that does include nonprofit employers. Nonprofit agencies do have to follow this guideline as well. Then keep in mind that you are not allowed to run comp banks. You have to reimburse your employees at the rate of time and a half for their overtime. Now, there is some legislation that was proposed a little over a year ago, maybe even a little longer than that, that would state, if it were passed, that an employee would be able to choose if they would like to be paid time and a half, or if they would like to receive a comp bank. Now, the comp bank, of course, would be timed at time and a half. So if I worked 8 hours of overtime, then I would get 12 hours of comp time, right? Because it would be at time and a half. Now, according to this legislation, I could run the comp bank for the year that we're in, and then if at December 31st I had any time left in that bank, my employer would be required to go ahead and cash me out, okay? That's according to the way the legislation is currently written. Now, the legislation did pass, I believe it was the House, and has moved on to the Senate. But it's being held up in the Senate. It was referred to one committee, then moved to another committee. So it's been delayed time and again. It doesn't look hopeful for the legislation, honestly. But if you want to keep tabs on it, go to congress.gov and you can find it there. But again, I just throw that out just very minimally to let you know that there is something pending in case you've heard about it. However, don't get your hopes up. It's probably not going to be a thing that happens anytime soon. Comp time, though, is something that gets thrown around a lot. Employers feel like they have the option, and many times employers will ask me, but if we have a written policy about it, is it okay then? The answer is still no, because your policy cannot nullify federal law, okay? And so this is actually the feds saying no, okay? If the feds haven't made a law about something and they leave it up to your federal policy or to your company policy, then that's okay. But there is actually a law about this, so no is the answer to that question. Now, let me explain to you how flex time works, because flex time is something that can happen, and I hate to even talk about this, but since it is a thing, and I know some of you will write me emails if I don't talk about it, then I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. So here is how flex time works. Now, it has to be in a 2-week pay period. And let me just preface this by saying most states do allow this. So check with your state before you actually administer this. Okay. Now, if this is allowed in your state, then if we have a 2-week pay period, in the first week of the pay period, let's say that I'm your employee and I work 45 hours. So I worked 5 hours of overtime. In the second week of the pay period, what you can do is flex those 5 hours of overtime at time and a half. So the 5 hours now becomes 7.5 hours, right? Because we flex them at time and a half. So we go half of 5 is 2.5. So 2.5 plus 5 is 7.5. That's where I come up with that. Correct? You're following me? Okay. So we're going to only have me working in that second week 32.5 hours. Because 32.5 plus 7.5 is 40 hours. Okay, and that would be a 40-hour work week. So 32.5 is all I'm going to work, but you're going to pay me for 40 hours. Okay, so then you pay me for 2 40-hour work weeks, and nobody pays me overtime. Okay, now if you don't want to do that, then what you need to do is have me work whatever I work, and then just pay me the overtime for the 5 hours that I worked in the first week. So flex time you have to be very careful with, because if you try to take any of that time out of that second week and carry it over to the third week or the next pay period, now you've broken the law. Okay? It has to be settled up in the same pay period that it occurred. And if you pay weekly, then you have no option but just let me off early on Friday, because otherwise you're paying me overtime. Okay? So make sure that when you administer flex time, you don't carry it outside of the pay period. You flex me in the pay period, or you cash me out at time and a half. So keep those things in mind. No comp time for the private sector. No comp time for nonprofit organizations. Only in the public sector. And if you have a union agreement, for instance, or a collective bargaining of some sort that has allowed for a comp bank, that is something completely outside of this. We are talking about private sector employers only. Until next time, keep calm, employ on. Remember, help is on your desk. Have a good one.